Though the song's a powerful song, at least in my life, and I heard it within the past year. And the two words that are so powerful in probably all of our lives, but God. The description of what happened, and then, but God. Jeff Steele wrote this. Jeff is with the Steels, if you follow Southern Gospel music. But another song that I sing, he wrote it, the title you may not remember, but it's God Kept His Promise. It's a unique way of delivering a message. The story goes, he recalls sitting in his home office one day when he received a call from his good friend Randy Cato of WSTS Radio. Randy said, "Jeff, I must share with you a phone call that I received early this morning here at the station. A gentleman called in and requested that I play that song that says, 'God was first on the scene.' He also wanted to know who sings that song." I immediately went into my DJ mode and said, "Oh, that's the Steels. They came off the road for a few years while Jeff pastored a church in Cullman, Alabama, but they recently returned to touring." The gentleman quickly interrupted and said, "I don't care about that." This past Saturday, my 19-year-old son was killed in an automobile accident. And I would just like to hear that song. I want to especially hear that part again that says, God was first on the scene. The gentleman went on to say, "I want to hear that before the ambulance and the emergency workers arrived, that God was already on the scene and cradled my son into his loving arms. And ushered him into heaven." Jeff shared, "I was speechless after hearing what the gentleman had conveyed to Randy. This really shook me. It's hard to picture a dad in that circumstance. You never know when you write a song how it will minister to others. But it's comforting for me to know that but God ministered and helped this father cope with the loss of his son." When we learned the news of Barbara's brother's death, that he was mowing his yard, a nice little small level yard. He mowed the yard and dropped dead. They said he probably was dead before he hit the ground. But it troubled Barbara that he died alone. But that story helped her to realize God was first on the scene. And he knew before it happened. I was preparing this song, and we were on an airplane going to Nashville, Barbara and myself, and I was on the internet and pulled these stories up and reading these, and one of us was crying like a baby. And he knocked his drink over, which knocked his tomato juice over, which spilled it all down his pant leg and into his bag and all over the airplane wall and floor. But Jeff also says, when I wrote the second verse of this song, I wrote it because, well, every song needs a second verse. And so I thought of it as a throwaway verse. Excuse me. Then one night I got an email from a sex abuse survivor. They had been sexually abused on a regular basis as a child. They told me how the second verse of "But God" had so ministered to them. So I went back and listened to it from the perspective of a child who was sexually abused. And the second verse says, "In all our lives we seldom know how many nights the angels were bent low. They are never far. The Father's always close. Some may say, give up. They don't know." I suddenly got it. It wasn't a throwaway verse at all. In fact, I now think it is the song. Thank you, Lord, for knowing what we don't know and ministering with a throwaway verse to those who may feel thrown away. But God. I know there are stories all across this congregation. I don't know if Pastor, you can share that one. Where God is prepared for what's about to happen. So this song means that to me. The call comes in, we get the word. An accident or something bad occurred. We begin to pray, believing we are heard. The doctor says, prepare for the worst. But God, He was first on the scene. Before it happened, He knew our need. How many of us would think it quite odd that we wouldn't be here except for 2 words, but God. In all our lives we seldom know how many times the angels were bent low. They were never far, the Father's always close. Some may say, give up, they don't know. But God was first on the scene. Before it happened, how many of us would find it quite odd that we wouldn't be here except for 2 words, but God. How many? But God was first on the scene. Before it happened, how many of us except for 2 words, but God. How many of us would find it quite odd that we wouldn't be here except for 2 words, but God? How many of us would find it quite odd that we wouldn't be here except for 2 words, but God?